So let's review. Our shir began with the Gemara referring to the Mishnah on Daf Mem Hey Amud Aleph, which said about dough stuck in the cracks of a kli. V'chein le'inin hatuma, im makbar alav chaitzit, v'im reitzit b'kiyumai harehu ka'areva. The same is true with regard to tumah. If a person does not want the dough there, it is a chatzitza. But if he wants it there, it is not a chatzitza, because it becomes part of the bowl. The Gemara asks, midami? Why the word v'chein? How is this similar to the previous halacha in the Mishnah about the chametz issue? With regard to chametz, b'shiyura talya milsa, the determining factor is the amount of dough, kizayis, or less than a kizayis. With regard to tumah, b'kpei talya milsa, the determining factor is whether the person would prefer that the dough not be there or that it be there. The Gemara suggests 4 answers. First, ema ul'inin hatuma einokain. The wording in the Mishnah should be changed to reflect not a comparison, but a contrast between chametz and tumah. The next 3 terutzim all interpret the Mishnah similarly, that the Mishnah is speaking of a given halacha of tumah which depends on whether the dough is considered separate and not part of the kli or part of the kli. Mitzaref, combining the piece of dough in the crack with other food in the bowl to make up the shir of a kebeya, so that if they become tameh, they can be mitame other food. If it's not batal to the kli, it can be mitzaref with the other food. If it is batal to the kli, it cannot be mitzaref. Chatzitza for tevilah. In the case where the bowl is tameh and requires tevilah, if it's not part of the kli, it is a chatzitza. If it's part of the kli, it's not a chatzitza. The Mishnah is speaking about the bowl becoming tameh if a tumah touches the piece of dough that's in the crack, but does not touch the bowl itself. If it's not part of the kli will not become tameh. If it is part of the kli will become tameh. Now the question is, what criteria determine whether it's considered part of the kli? Therefore, the Mishnah says, v'chein le'inin hatumah. During Pesach, the criteria of bir chametz will apply to tumah as well. Dough the size of a kizayis requires bir because it's not batal to the kli. Therefore, it is mitzaref, it is a chatzitza, and the kli does not become tameh, as Rashi explains. Since the isra chametz makes it chashuv and distinct from the kli, it is also considered significant and distinct regarding tumah. Less than a kizayis does not require bir because it is batal to the kli. Therefore, it is not mitzaref, it is not a chatzitza, and the kli does become tameh. The Mishnah then continues. However, during the year when there is no isra chametz, the criterion is kepeda. If he's makbar alav, he does not want it there, it is not batal to the kli. Therefore, it is mitzaref, it is a chatzitza, and the kli does not become tameh. If he's ready to be kiyumai, he does want it there, it is batal to the kli. Therefore, it is not mitzaref, it is not a chatzitza, and the kli does become tameh. Zak the Mishnah. Betzek hacheresh. Em yesh kayetze bay shehichmitz hariza aser. If a dough has turned white, but has not developed any cracks after some time, and we don't know whether it has become chametz, if there is another dough that was kneaded at the same time, which is clearly chametz, we assume that this dough is also chametz. The Gemara adds that if there is no other dough to compare it to, if the amount of time it takes to walk a mill has passed, we assume that it is chametz. Once we mentioned the shear of a mill, the Gemara mentions that according to Rish Lakish, one would have to travel 4 mil for the following 3 halachas. Legabel, one who is hired to knead dough, to be entirely utensil provided, ulitfila, to daven in a shul with a minyan, or netilas yadayim, to wash his hands for a meal. However, regarding tefillah and netilas yadayim, leishanu el lefanav. This is only when the shul or available water is in front of him, in the direction that he's traveling anyway. But he does not have to go back, or in any other direction, even 1 mil. The Gemara adds, hapaches mimil chayzer, but less than a mil he must go back. Rashi points out that a gabel must go 4 mil in any direction, since he's not traveling. Rav Nachman Yitzchak adds another halacha that relates to 4 mil. Ibud. Animal skins are made inedible and become tar when trampled on for the amount of time it takes to walk 4 mil. Ketzam afrishin chala b'tumah b'yamtim. The Mishnah discusses the dilemma of somebody who is baking a tameh dough on Pesach. Normally he would separate some of the dough as challah and bake it so it does not become chametz. However, it is asur to bake challah tameya on Yom Tov because even a kohen cannot eat challah tameya. There are 3 opinions in the Mishnah as to how to best deal with the situation. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, lo tikra l'Hashem ad shetefa. She should not do hafrashas challah until after the dough is fully baked. This way, she will not be baking challah tmeya. But Meseira Eimer, tatel b'tzainen, she should separate challah from the dough, and then stunt the leavening process by putting the dough in cold water until after Yom Tov. Amr Bishua, Loi zehu chametz shemuzharin alav b'bal yorah b'al yimatzeh. Yeshua holds that one is not over bal yorah b'al yimatzeh for having in his possession challah that is chametz, based on the exemption of shalcha iyataraya, abalat shal shal gevaya, because as soon as it is separated, it's no longer his. The challah belongs to the shevet kayanim. Therefore, there is no problem with doing the hafrasha and allowing it to become chametz. Apparently, Rabbi Yeshua disagreed with the earlier Tanoim whether you can have challah that is chametz in your house on Pesach. The Gemara has two suggestions as to what they're arguing about. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer holds teves moment, the ability to earn the gratitude of the kohen for choosing to give the challah specifically to him, is considered a substantial stake in the challah to be considered his, and that is why he cannot allow it to become chametz. While Yeshua holds teves ain't moment, the ability to earn gratitude is not considered a substantial stake in the challah to be considered his, and therefore he can allow it to become chametz in his possession. Alternatively, Rabbi Eliezer holds, since he can undo its status as challah, it's considered his money, and therefore he cannot allow it to become chametz. Whereas Rabbi Yeshua holds, the ability to undo its status does not make it his, and therefore he can allow it to become chametz. Once we mentioned the concept of hayil, the Gemara mentions another type of hayil. Generally, we may not do malachis on Yom Tov based on the pasuk le'sasika malacha, which is punishable by malchus. However, the Torah made an exception for work done l'tzorich oichel nefesh, for the purpose of eating on Yom Tov. Now, in the case of ha'oifa mi Yom Tov l'chayil, one who bakes on Yom Tov for the purpose of the weekdays, as Rashi explains, once he has completed his meal, this food is obviously intended for the evening after Yom Tov or the next day. It would seem to be asur, unless we employ the principle of haylu mikli le'archem chazile. Since if many guests would arrive unexpectedly on Yom Tov, he would need the food for Yom Tov. We can view this baking as being done for Yom Tov. And this is actually a machlekes. Rav Chizda Amar loika lo'emrin hayil. He gets malchus because Rav Chizda does not subscribe to the principle of hayil. Rabba Amar eina loika amrin hayil. He does not get malchus because Rabba does subscribe to the principle of hayil. However, it remains asim d'Rabbanan because right now he does not yet have guests. The Gemara next addresses the question: Heich eifin mi Yom Tov l'Shabbos. When Yom Tov falls on Friday, based on what do we cook and bake for Shabbos? As the Gemara points out, eruv tavshilin is a takana d'Rabbanan, which cannot be matter in Issur D'Oraisa. However, according to Rabbah, the principle of hayil removes the Issur D'Oraisa, and the Issur D'Rabbanan is removed by making eruv tavshilin. According to Rav Chizda, the Gemara says that he holds midiraisa tzarchi Shabbos nasa b'Yom Tov, as Rashi explains. Shabbos b'Yom Tov chadi kedushahi, the tarvayu Shabbos ikru. V'chi heichid the mutal lavashal b'Yom mutal lavashal machar. Shabbos and Yom Tov are one kedusha. Therefore, midiraisa one may cook on Yom Tov or Shabbos. The Chacham, however, did not allow it because gizera shemiyomru eifin miyom Tov av l'chayil. People might erroneously think that one may bake on Yom Tov for the weekdays. The requirement of eruv tavshilin will remind people that only mi Yom Tov l'Shabbos is mutter, but mi Yom Tov l'chayil is asur.